Have you ever wondered why, in the presence of one woman, a man feels like a titan capable of moving mountains, while next to another, he turns into an eternally guilty shell of himself? Afraid to take an extra step? We are used to believing that a relationship is a quiet harbour based on reciprocity, but reality often turns out to be far more sophisticated and multi-layered. There is a hidden side of female psychology that is not usually discussed at social gatherings, but which daily breaks the destinies of the strongest and most successful men, turning their internal monolith into a pile of rubble. On the Psycheria channel, we do not engage in accusations or the broadcasting of grievances. We expose the very architecture of influence, bearing the invisible threads pulled by masters of emotional control. Today, I will lead you through the labyrinths of quiet control and show you how, with the help of barely noticeable psychological injections, total dependence is created, one that is almost impossible to escape without specialized knowledge. Enjoy the viewing. First, the art of soft isolation and the social vacuum is related. It all begins not with scandals or open prohibitions, but with a creeping, almost tender silence. You won't notice how your social space begins to shrink like shea green leather, depriving you of your anchor points in the outside world. This is the first stage of territorial seizure, which I call the creation of an aesthetic vacuum. Imagine that your partner, let's say Sarah, begins to show extraordinary, almost maternal care for your leisure time. She will never tell you directly, "I forbid you from seeing your friends." No, that would be too crude and would instantly spark your protest. She acts much more subtly, on the level of nuances and moods. Every time you plan to meet your old friend Mark, Sarah suddenly feels a slight malaise. Or it is on this very evening that it is vitally necessary for her to discuss something important and deeply personal with you. Gradually, a steady conditioned reflex forms within you. Any attempt to manifest autonomy outside of the couple is associated with discomfort within it. She might casually, as if in passing, remark that Mark isn't the best influence on you, or your relatives interfere in our lives too often, disrupting our idyll. This is not an ultimatum, it is a soft, layered suggestion. The goal of this strategy is to become your sole source of emotional nourishment, information, and validation. A man deprived of external input loses the ability to objectively assess the scale of what is happening in his home. When you are cut off from the male brotherhood and independent opinions, your critical thinking inevitably dulls. You find yourself in a hermetic information capsule where the only mirror in which you see your reflection belongs to her. And if this mirror begins to broadcast the image of a selfish or insufficiently attentive person, you no longer have outside witnesses who could refute it. Your identity begins to slowly dissolve into her interpretation of your personality until you finally believe that without her, you are nothing. The second level, linguistic gaslighting and the theft of reality. The second level of control is the systematic undermining of your trust in your own perception, memory, and common sense. In professional circles, this is often called gaslighting, but in the hands of a master of influence, it looks not like an attack, but like an innocent and even caring clarification of facts. Suppose you clearly remember that Emily promised you specific support in an important matter, but in practice, she does something completely opposite. When you calmly point out this discrepancy, she does not argue. She looks at you with sincere sympathy, a slight worry in her eyes, and says, "Honey, you've mixed everything up again. You must be so tired from work, you've been under such stress. I never said that. You must have dreamed it, or confused me with someone else." In this moment, something fatal happens to the male psyche. Instead of defending the objective truth, you begin to doubt the reliability of your own mind. The constant rewriting of the history of your dialogues leads to you losing the ground beneath your feet. If such micro-episodes occur regularly, the man develops a state of chronic uncertainty. You catch yourself starting to double-check, clarify, and sometimes even secretly record events, but the manipulation system always stays one step ahead. Already accusing you of suspiciousness or paranoia, control through doubt is the ultimate form of psychological dominance, turning a grown leader into a confused child. When you can no longer unconditionally trust your own eyes and ears, you are forced to rely on the one who always remembers everything correctly. Thus, you voluntarily and with a sense of relief hand over the helm of your reality. A woman using this tactic doesn't just change your behavior, she completely rewires your internal coordinate system, making you pliable material for any future manipulations where the truth is only what is beneficial to her. Third, the currency of guilt, infinite credit and emotional slavery. One of the most powerful and time-tested tools in the arsenal of quiet control is the creation of an artificial, permanent deficit of your rightness. Let's call it emotional lending. The essence of this scheme is simple. You are given a generous advance of love, care, and self-sacrifice, for which a bill is later presented that exceeds all reasonable limits. If Linda once did something truly significant for you or supported you in a difficult moment, she will make sure that this event becomes an eternal, indisputable argument in any subsequent dispute. How can you disagree with me or demand something for yourself after I sacrificed everything for you last year? This phrase acts like a heavy bolt, closing off any constructive dialogue. Guilt turns into a universal currency with which you pay for your every breath. You catch yourself starting to do things not out of a sincere desire to please a loved one, but out of a weary urge to pay off this endless, growing debt. This mechanism turns your life into an eternal working off of the past, depriving you of the right to the present and future. However, the paradox and tragedy of this situation lie in the fact that this credit is fundamentally impossible to pay off in full. Your every effort is accepted as a given, as a partial payment of interest, while any minor slip-up instantly increases the principal interest rate of the debt. In this perverted coordinate system, you are always in a deep moral deficit. A man living in a state of eternal debt gradually loses his natural aggressiveness, drive, and ambition. All his life energy is spent not on external expansion and victories, but on exhausting attempts to earn forgiveness for the very fact of his existence, which makes him absolutely manageable and passive. Fourth, triangulation, the invisible rival and the eternal casting. Even if you are the only two people in the room, a third party can always be invisibly present in your relationship, creating a crowd effect and competition. This doesn't necessarily have to be a real lover or a former suitor more often. It is a delicately constructed image of the ideal man or the example of some successful neighbor, Jack. The tool of triangulation works through constant drip-feed comparison, which by a strange coincidence always ends up not in your favor. When Chloe casually mentions how beautifully and generously her friend's husband cares for the family, or how brilliantly her new colleague solves the most complex professional problems, she involves you in a silent competition to which you did not consent. You begin to run on an endless treadmill, trying to catch a phantom that doesn't actually exist in nature. This creates a constant background noise of anxiety and deep self-dissatisfaction in your soul, undermining your male self-esteem. You begin to feel that your place next to this woman is not guaranteed or stable. It must be defended every day in a competitive struggle, proving that you are better than that mythical guy. The constant need to confirm your professional suitability burns out all internal resources. The most interesting and cruel part of this game is that as soon as you reach the set bar with titanic effort, the goalpost is instantly and silently moved even higher. Triangulation keeps a man in a state of eternal test mode, which inevitably escalates into chronic stress and burnout. You cease to be the master of the situation and turn into an eternal candidate for a vacancy that is formally already occupied by you, but the contract for which can be annulled at any second by a decision of the HR department in the person of your partner, forcing you to invest more and more for less and less return. Fifth, the biochemistry of the seesaw, the dopamine loop and training. For control over your personality to be truly deep and long-term, manipulation must descend to the level of neurochemistry. The most effective and destructive tactic here is intermittent reinforcement. This is a sharp, unpredictable alternation between periods of absolute, enveloping tenderness and sudden, icy alienation. Remember the beginning of your relationship with Sophie. It was a true waterfall of dopamine, endless messages, sincere admiration for your every word, the illusion of perfect understanding with half a glance. You became accustomed to this drug, considering it a deserved reward. And then, completely suddenly and for no apparent reason, the phase of the great cold arrives. Sophie stops answering calls, her gaze becomes empty and evaluative, and she distances herself physically and emotionally. In a state of panic, you try to regain that heavenly state by making increasingly large investments, gifts, concessions, confessions. This emotional hunger makes you lose your mind. And then, just as you are on the verge of total emotional exhaustion, she suddenly thaws and generously rewards you with a portion of her former warmth. Your brain, starved for dopamine, perceives this as an incredible lottery win, as salvation. You get hooked on this needle like a true addict. This cycle turns your relationship into a psychological casino where the house always wins. Over time, you catch yourself realizing that you no longer love the person you love, the colossal relief that comes after the forgiveness phase. A man in a dopamine loop is ready to give up any resources and endure any humiliation just to end the agonizing phase of being ignored. This is a pure form of training where your will is systematically broken through the biological mechanism of reward and punishment, making you a predictable and absolutely manageable slave to someone else's moods. Sixth, retrospective falsification, the art of stealing your past. When a woman subconsciously or consciously prepares the ground for a change in life scenario or a sharp tightening of her control, she resorts to revision of the past. This is an astonishingly cynical process in which all your shared memories are subjected to strict censorship and reinterpretation. All the moments where you showed male strength and decisiveness are retroactively declared toxic aggression, while your sincere care and protection are labelled a suffocating attempt at total control. Rewriting history deprives you of the opportunity to appeal to facts. Olivia might begin to claim with full confidence that she was always deeply unhappy in this union, even if just yesterday you were laughing together, making plans for the future, and enjoying intimacy. This is done to completely deprive you of the moral support of your past merits and achievements. If your shared past is declared defective and false, you automatically lose your voice in the present. You begin to believe that you truly did something wrong the whole way, and this feeling of your own wrongness makes a man psychologically defenseless. You lose the sense of your personal history, and therefore the foundation of your identity. Every happy frame of your memory is replaced by a negative slide created in her interest. Without this connection to yourself, you turn into an empty shell, a function that can easily be reprogrammed for the current needs and whims of the partner. You become a hostage to a new version of reality in which you are an eternal debtor to the suffering party, deprived even of the right to good memories. Seventh, the information capsule and discrediting authority. Masters of quiet control brilliantly use the technique of authority replacement. Gradually, step by step, all your external sources of knowledge, experience, and confidence are subjected to quiet discredit. Your favorite books are declared boring or outdated, your long-standing hobbies a ridiculous waste of precious time, and your indisputable expert opinions in a professional environment are presented as lucky breaks or coincidences. This is a systematic intellectual dismantling of your personality. The goal of this strategy is to leave you in a state of total cognitive vacuum, where the only reliable criterion of truth is her personal taste, her mood, and her opinion. This soft but continuous intellectual suppression deprives a man of the scale of his personality. When you stop being interested in the vast world outside the circle of her interests, you become a safe and predictable object. She wants you to look at the world exclusively through her eyes. You no longer represent a threat to her control system because your event horizon is now limited to the walls of your shared home and her list of small errands. A man deprived of intellectual freedom and the right to his own expertise quickly loses his inner fire, turning into an efficient but emotionally burned out administrator of household tasks. You become a shadow of yourself, whose thoughts are merely an echo of her beliefs, and your ambitions are suppressed by a sense of your own incompetence in everything that does not concern her desires. You voluntarily surrender the right to the truth to a person whose primary goal is to make your worldview secondary and dependent. Gradually, your faith in your own strength is replaced by her authoritative doubt, turning your mind into territory completely controlled by an outside will. 8th, hidden devaluation and the social pillory. The most insidious and poisonous form of influence is not open, honest criticism face to face, but small, almost invisible, yet extremely painful micro-stings in front of other people. Let's call this public devaluation. Grace might, with a charming smile, tell an embarrassing or stupid story about you in a company of shared friends, presenting it as a cute and funny joke. She strikes where it hurts most at your status in the pack, but inside this joke, there is always a paralyzing poison aimed at undermining your authority. Such episodes systematically strike at your social reputation and, more importantly, at your deep self-perception as a leader. If this is repeated regularly, you begin to feel stiff and awkward in any society, subconsciously expecting another blow to the gut. You gradually give up going out, closing yourself off in her space. This forces you to close in on yourself even more and cling to the only safe source of attention, Grace herself. She brilliantly creates a problem, your growing social insecurity, and immediately, like a savior, offers a solution: her support and understanding of your complex character. This is a classic psychological trap, where you begin to feel sincere gratitude toward the one who systematically and professionally destroys your self-confidence, making you her eternal hostage. Over time, you stop believing that you can be respected at all outside of this relationship, and you voluntarily hand over the right to your social life into her hands. You become like a person grateful for a sip of water from the one who locked him in a scorching desert. In the end, your world shrinks to the size of her approval, and you finally forget that you were once an independent individual capable of evoking sincere admiration in those around you. 9th, the architecture of exit, the path to male sovereignty. How does one break this invisible but strong cocoon of emotional slavery? The first and hardest part is to find the courage within yourself to admit the fact of the influence. For us men, raised on ideals of strength, it is extremely difficult to admit to ourselves that we are being manipulated through our feelings. We are used to considering ourselves physically protected, but subtle psychological methods act in bypass of any physical strength or logical armor. Your honesty with yourself is your first weapon. Reclaiming sovereignty begins with the immediate restoration of your boundaries and personal space. You must again feel where you end and where someone else's will begins. You need to rebuild your information, financial, and social independence brick by brick. Return to your old time-tested connections. Find those witnesses of your true reality who remember you as a strong, purposeful, and independent leader. Reassemble your team. Stop looking for endless excuses for her destructive behavior. If you feel that your overall condition, physical and mental, is steadily deteriorating next to a specific person, this is the most reliable biological indicator, which will never lie. The body signals the toxicity of the environment long before the mind decides to rebel. The second fundamental step is a total and unconditional refusal to participate in any emotional games. On the Psycheria channel, we always emphasize the only way to guaranteed win a game with a professional manipulator is to simply exit the game. Stop explaining the motives of your actions, stop making excuses, and certainly stop proving your value through new feats. Your silence is stronger than any words. Your value is a constant. It does not require confirmation or approval from someone who is fundamentally interested in its systematic decrease. Remember that true intimacy is always a mutual multiplication of your strength and potential, not their division or subtraction. Any attempt to negotiate with someone who denies your agency is doomed to failure. If a relationship makes you dim and lose the will to live, it means you have ceased to be a partner and turned into an object of consumption. Preserve your inviolable inner cabinet, that deep part of your soul, mission, and life, where no one has access but yourself. This is your gold reserve, the only guarantee of your eternal freedom. The world is full of hidden scenarios and invisible traps, but now you have a detailed map in your hands. Remember, your life belongs only to you, and no one has the right to use it as fuel for their ambitions or complexes. Be extremely attentive to details, trust your intuition more than the most beautiful words, and never let the fog of someone else's manipulations hide the harsh reality of actions from you. Your life is your sacred fortress, and only you are endowed with the right to decide who is truly worthy of crossing its threshold and who will remain outside its walls forever. Insight is always painful, but it is the only price for the right to be free. Do you want to learn more about how to recognize quiet control at the very earliest stages of an acquaintance when everything seems perfect? Write the code word autonomy in the comments under this video, and it will serve as a signal for us to continue exposing these dangerous codes of reality. We will prepare even deeper breakdowns for you. Protect your clarity, subscribe to Psycheria, and stay true to your path, no matter the cost. See you in the next episode, where we will continue returning to men the right to their own, undistorted and free reality.